Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this video, we're going to be counting down the best of the hand cannoneer civilizations in Age of Empires 2. This topic is extra salient at the moment, as one civilization we'll see has recently rocketed from being probably around ranking 5th out of the 7 notable hand cannoneer civilizations to now top tier as of a recent change that we'll look at. Just to acknowledge the hand cannoneer's rise itself though, it's come a long way, even a few years ago being widely considered extremely underpowered until a series of buffs, first increasing their accuracy and reducing the spread on their shots, then raising their HP and increasing the speed of their projectiles, making them harder to dodge. Even without civilization bonuses and unique techs, the unit itself is already much more viable these days. As for what we should be looking for in our top tier hand cannons, there's a few things to consider, obviously starting with bonuses that help to transition into them or make them particularly strong with a high ceiling. But we should also factor in how they work within a civilization's tech tree, covering up a weak crossbow line for example, as well as think about what other units are available to complement hand cannons. There's a few things that have to be weighed at the same time here, so let's jump in. Starting off at number 7, we have what's probably a surprise, with the Turks. They're well known for a fast imperial into gunpowder, including hand cannons, with several bonuses helping out, between free and instant chemistry to unlock them, a 25% faster creation time, plus 25% more HP, bringing them up from 40 to 50. This was the OG hand cannon civilization, and make for a great combo with Turk Hussars to deal with skirmishers and siege, which also happen to have extra pierce armor and their own free upgrades. If Turk hand cannons are so infamous, pair perfectly with their Hussars and bombard cannons, and have several bonuses, then you're probably wondering why are they only number 7. The problem is, while they get out to a great early start compared to many other civilizations, they just fizzle out in late Imperial Age, being best known on very specific maps, mostly arena, where they can get away with zero pressure, and even then can have trouble against good knight civs. The fact they don't have the staying power of the higher entries on the list holds them back. Plus, of all the things to improve by 25%, HP and creation speed are probably the least impressive long term. The Janissary also steals a bit of their thunder as well, as Elite Janissary feels in some ways like a better, or at least more versatile hand cannoneer with its higher base attack. Either way, the fact Turks are starting us off on a gunpowder related list just tells you how strong the rest of the civilizations coming up are going to be. Next up, at number 6, we have another great gunpowder civilization with the Bohemians. They have access one age earlier to chemistry and hand cannons, as well as a unique tech for 15% more speed. Similar to Turks, the main selling feature is the timing aspect, with opponents having to potentially respond to hand cannons with Castle Age units, making them feel much stronger in practice than their stats alone convey. Again, long term though, the only real advantage ends up being their faster speed, which does make them better at dodging onager and bombard cannon shots, even keeping pace or being slightly faster than a lot of infantry units, archers, or skirmishers as well. That's handy if you pay attention to micro them, which on the one hand isn't ideal in Imperial Age, but hand cannons being so expensive also means they're probably worth that extra attention. Within a wider context, they're also an important unit for Bohemians especially, pairing well with their halberdiers having extra bonus damage, Hussite wagons to tank archers and skirmishers, and hoofnits to snipe enemy onagers, but would otherwise lack that anti-infantry specialist to round things out. Just like Turks, if we were considering all gunpowder units together, Bohemians would undoubtedly be S tier, but the hand cannons themselves are only a small contributor to that. Moving on to number 5, we have the Portuguese. Right away, you have nice passive bonuses of a 10 gold discount per hand cannon, plus the very slow to research chemistry tech comes in 25% faster, along with all their university techs. The most interesting aspect here though is the unique tech Arquebus, letting them track moving targets, just like ballistics. Tracking targets helps a lot against enemies trying to micro, but does little to nothing against units close up or who are standing still, so it's a bit situationally helpful. Maybe controversially, I actually think this upgrade is significantly less helpful for hand cannons than ballistics is for crossbows, as hand cannons already miss quite a bit from low accuracy, and they won't typically do a lot of raiding, which is where ballistics gives a lot of its value, as crossbows otherwise have a hard time catching villagers. While Portuguese lack the early power spike you could credit the first 2 entries in the list with having, I think they make up for that with a higher ceiling, and I'm also a huge fan of discounts, as they help you get your numbers up and take more cost-effective engagements. On the other hand, there's a bit of a question of how much hand cannons bring to Portuguese specifically, as the organ gun is already quite good against infantry these days, thanks to bonus damage, while they don't have the same weakness as hand cannons to skirmishers. Still, even from the discount alone, Portuguese hand cannons give some extra value and would beat a lot of the others on the list head-to-head in controlled balanced resource fights. Next up at number 4, we have the Spanish, with 18% faster attack speed for their gunpowder units, including hand cannoneers. Faster firing is pretty self-explanatory, and also in this case doesn't require any sort of unique tech to unlock. The hand cannon actually performs a very needed role for Spanish, who have a terrible archer line, even lacking access to crossbow, so within the tech tree are an important option for dealing with infantry. One argument may be that the Spanish conquistador somewhat overshadows their hand cannon, but I see them as different enough that they don't really compete. Conquistadors are more of a castle-age star that excel at raiding in small numbers and with a bit of micro. Between needing castles, a 24-second creation time, plus a higher cost, by Imperial Age, hand cannons offer an easier-to-mass way to add a bulk DPS unit, albeit without the same mobility, so they have their pros and cons. Spanish also turn pretty heavily toward being a stable civilization in the late game, which is where faster-firing hand cannoneers can be a nice complement to deal with infantry. While other civilizations we've seen might make hand cannons more often, and certainly earlier, I think they play an important role for Spanish, and in some ways hit above their weight class, beating all but the discounted hand cannoneer civilizations head-to-head with balanced resources. Moving on and making for an excellent contrast, at number 3 we have the Burgundians. In this case, they have plus 25% attack, which in theory might even sound worse than Spanish plus 18% attack rate, as Burgundians theoretically just end up getting a lot more overkill, but there's some other points here working in its favor. First off, it multiplies their base attack, as well as any bonus damage. And remember, armor always takes away a flat amount off the top, which means it functionally ends up almost always doing more than 25% extra in net damage. And the numbers against some very important matchups also happen to align favorably on top of that. For example, against fully upgraded halberdiers, they go from 3 to just 2 shots. Champions, elite huskarls, and elite ghulams all drop by 1 hit, and even the paladin has a significant drop from 18 to 13. Notice that's not just 25%, but in these cases more like 30 or even 50% more effective, which is not to say the game's wording is wrong, but just the reality of how an attack increase of that size plays out. This makes them the hardest hitting on the list, but you also have to consider the important role it plays for Burgundians in particular, having an early cavalier into paladin or courtier strategy encouraged, so you naturally want something in behind to support those, with Burgundians lacking arbalester, thumb ring, and ring armor, making your archer line and even skirmisher a little below average, so your hand cannons are really thrust into the spotlight by virtue of their tech tree. The point about potentially more overkill and waste has to be acknowledged, but when you put them to the test against infantry or very high armor targets, they tend to come out looking a little better than Spanish, while being just as important to their civilization overall. But now we come to the newly improved hand cannoneer civilization in vogue today, at number 2, the Italians. They would already have made the list before, having a 20% unit discount as well as cheaper chemistry, in a way feeling like a better version of the Portuguese similar sounding bonuses. What's new though is their unique tech Pyrotechnia, which I haven't talked about on the channel yet, though this seems like a great time. It is fairly expensive, but has 2 effects. First, raising the hand cannon's accuracy from 75% to 90%, which in fairness can actually work against you a bit in terms of overkill, though notably a raise in accuracy was one of the main ways the unit was improved that led to its suddenly better reputation a few years back. The other effect is then 15% pass-through damage, similar in idea to a scorpion. To give a sense of how that works, it's somewhat distance dependent, and targeting units at point-blank range doesn't lead to any pass-through. But if you're standing further away, it hits the unit you target plus any units in front and up to 2 tiles behind. Keep in mind, this is just 15% of the regular damage after all armor is calculated, rather than the usual 50% of some other pass-through units. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it can have a big impact. In this example, the Italians clear out 27 champions 34% faster with the tech, as a combination of higher accuracy and pass-through damage. On the other hand, against champions in staggered formation, they're only 11% faster, so you can see how much more effective they are against units that are actively being used in line formation and are constantly regrouping. For that reason, arbalesters then become a prime target with the unique tech, being cleared out amazingly 50% faster with that pass-through damage, which is similar to the result you get against bunched up halberdiers as well. Unlike the Burgundian higher attack, this is if anything reducing overkill and more efficiently spreading damage, not just doubling down on overpowering individual units excessively. The flip side is that against high armor units, they don't have quite the same piercing power,
and against these paladins only clear them out 19% faster, similar to what we'd expect from Spanish, for example. At the least, they're on par or maybe slightly ahead of Burgundians and Spanish against tight groups of units. But remember, they have a discount on top of this, which alone would let them win cost effectively against everything else on the list. Plus, Italians have a discount for aging up, so they have a bit of that Turk faster access to hand cannon thing going on as well. Given the raw number of bonuses making them cost effective and easy to get to, plus the unique tech making them arguably as pop efficient as the other highlights on the list, I'd completely understand an argument that Italians should be number 1. But I personally wouldn't quite put them there, as I think number 1 has a slightly higher ceiling, believe it or not. Before we get to that though, we have an important honorable mention with the Inca, who managed to sneak in their own alternate version of the hand cannoneer in Castle Age as the Slinger, which has the same plus 10 bonus against infantry and plays a similar function. Arguably, in some cases, it's even better against infantry, given its higher accuracy and fire rate, though by the same token highlights the hand cannon actually brings more to the table than just its anti-infantry bonus, as its high base attack makes it more versatile against high melee armor units like Paladin, so it's not quite a one-to-one replacement. We also have to mention the Gurchins as a notable exclusion, since despite being the new gunpowder civ, they have no hand cannons at all, and instead use the Grenadier, which technically does have plus 9 bonus against infantry, nearly matching the hand cannon, but is just a bit too different for this list. Finally though, at number 1, we have the Hindustanis. They get +1/+1 armor on gunpowder, which I honestly barely care about for our purposes here, though in some cases can give almost as much benefit as the Turks' HP bonus. Instead, this is all about the unique tech, giving them +2 range, which I understand may sound less impactful than the Italians, but I think is better. Back when it was +1 range, it probably wouldn't have earned the top spot, but at +2, they're no longer outranged by onagers, having 9 compared to an onager's 8 or 9 depending on siege engineers, and skirmishers are also outranged, helping a ton against 2 of your biggest threats, plus making them harder for melee units to charge down as well. Range just feels like the best stat for ranged units, and at the end of the day, I don't think any of the other bonuses or techs giving hand cannons more DPS are as impactful in a practical situation. You also have to think about the Hindustanis as a civilization as well, who have a great answer to cavalry with camels and archers with the Ghulam, but lack Arbalester, and neither Ghulam or the camel is great against infantry. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. They do have good cavalry archers, but those end up with 2 less range, and it still feels like this is where the hand cannon as a hard infantry counter completes the Hindustani tech tree. If you want to experience the best possible hand cannoneers with the highest ceiling, these are them. That'll do it for this one though. Thanks to James, Jared2142, Niels, Samantha, Shawarma Rider, Steven, Woodruff, and everyone else on Patreon for their amazing support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.